I'm going to show you some really cool chord changes which can have a real emotional pull on the listener. They're just two chords, but have a listen to these examples. Now they were very simple examples, just moving from one chord to another. No orchestration, no synth pads, no fills, nothing at all like that. But I hope you agree that they were very effective. And there are more where they came from. Now these are based on a musical concept which I will explain. I would rather you didn't go running screaming from the room, although it's your room, so I guess you can run from it and scream if you want to. It might sound a little bit complex, but I will explain everything in detail to make it as clear as I possibly can. And I think it is not difficult once you understand the basic principles. So the concept is chromatic mediants. Bye, John. So I will explain what it means in simple terms with the minimum of music jargon. And then I will demonstrate how to find these wonderful chords on your own. Now you do need two things. You need to know how to form major and minor chords, and you do need to know a little bit about scales. I will do everything in the key of C major and C minor, so hopefully even if you are a little bit fuzzy about some of the details, you will be able to follow along. After the demo, I will also give you a little bit of a cheat sheet so you can sort of tie up these chord changes to emotional perception. So if you want something dark or bright or triumphant or mystical, whatever sort of feeling you want to put into your music, whatever sort of effect you want it to have on the listener, you can sort of look up this table and pick a couple of chord changes which will do the job. So let's look at this term, chromatic mediant. Again, with the minimum of music jargon, let's start with mediant. A mediant is simply the third. That's what it means in this context. So in the scale of C major, for example, the mediant would be E. Chromatic, well, a chromatic note is a note which is not natural to a particular scale. So if we take the scale of C major, they are all the white notes. They are all said to be part of the scale of C major. In music terms, little bit of music theory, in music terms they are said to be diatonic to the scale of C. A chromatic note is a note which is not diatonic to the scale. So again, in the scale of C, that means all the black notes are chromatic notes. Now if we look at chords, if the notes in a chord are all white notes, they are diatonic to the scale of C. If any of the notes in the chord contain a black note, they are chromatic to the scale of C. So putting these together, a chromatic mediant is a harmonic relationship between two chords whose root notes are a third apart, C and E, and the example we've been using, but whose notes, the notes in the chord, are not part of the same scale. So they are not diatonic to the same scale. Now, just in case there are any musicologists out there, there are slightly different interpretations of the term chromatic mediant. So this is one reason why I'm not going to get into the weeds. I'm not going to give you any more music theory around this. There are certain chord combinations which everyone agrees are chromatic mediants, and I will point those out in the demo. But I am not going to get into any discussions about exactly what is and what is not a chromatic mediant. If you are learning music, listen to your professor. Whatever your professor says is a chromatic mediant, that's a chromatic mediant. If you are not studying music, if you are a composer, then follow along, because you will get tons of great chords to use in your music. Now, at the end of the demo, I will give you a little sort of cheat sheet describing some of the emotional pulls these chord changes can have. That's enough music theory. Let's get to it. So we are going to start with the chord of C. And we're going to find our first, we'll call it a chromatic mediant, because it actually is, and I don't think anyone would argue with that. So we move up a third, and we're going to move up a major third, which is the E. The only distance between a major chord and a minor chord is the third. That is C major, that is C minor. The C major has a major third, and you can easily find that if you're a bit fuzzy about intervals and stuff by counting up 4 semitones from the root. The root is the note from which the chord takes its name, so it's C. That's the root. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is a major third. 1, 2, 3. 3 semitones is a minor third. So we'll start with the major third. We build a chord from it. What would we normally build? We would normally build E minor, but as the convention states, that is not chromatic. There are no chromatic notes in E minor. It is made up from white notes, which are diatonic to the scale of C major. So it is not chromatic, but the other chord we can make from the third is E major, and this has a black note in it. So E major is a chromatic mediant. Yes, indeed it is. So if we play these one after the other, we get this, which is a nice sound. You'll find this all over cinematic music. Anyway, that's just one of many. So instead of using the major third, if we use a minor third, what chord can we build from the minor third? Well, it's E flat, so we can build E flat major. This is obviously very chromatic because E flat is not found in the scale of C, on which the first chord is based. Neither is the B flat. So if we play these one after the other, we get this, which is another super chord progression, which again you will find all over cinematic music. Now, I don't think any musicologist would argue that that is a chromatic mediant, but we can also create the chord of E flat minor. And all 3 notes are chromatic notes. And some people may say, well, that's not exactly a chromatic mediant, but that depends on your definition, but I don't care. But just listen to this. And this is a chord that I played at the beginning with added strings. That is just a super sad, desolate chord. So I don't care if it is technically a chromatic mediant or not. It is just a super chord progression going from C to E flat minor. Really nice. Right, okay, so that's essentially the principle, and that's what I'm working on here. So we've gone up, and we can also go down. So if we go down, we'll start with a minor third. 1, 2, 3. We get to A, our normal A chord. I'm saying normal. It's probably the chord you would go to if you were playing something in C major. Our normal chord is A minor, which is diatonic to all the white notes in the scale of C major, so that is not chromatic, but A major is, because of the C sharp there. So again, just playing these 2 chords one after the other, we get this, which is a very noticeable chord progression. You may have heard that in some other pieces of music. Very cinematic, super chord progression, very triumphant. And if we go down a major third, 4 notes, we get A flat. This is one of the most iconic chromatic median chords out there. And this is the very first chord I played at the start of the video. So we're building a chord from A flat. We have A flat major, which is obviously very chromatic to the scale of C. It has the A flat in it. And if we put C and A flat together, we get this. It's just the fantasy trope. So that is just a super chord change from C to A flat. But of course we can also build A flat minor, and that is very chromatic to the scale of C as well. And if we play those two chords one after the other, we get a sound like this. That's dark, very dark. It's a little bit like our E flat minor chord, but not quite. I don't think it's quite as desolate. So anyway, that's the idea, that's the basic principles of how to come up with these super chords and these super little chord progressions. Now we've only done the major side of things using the C major chord as the root, but we can also use minor chords. So if we use C minor, let's start with the major third first of all. Well, that is obviously chromatic because it is not in the natural scale of C minor, C natural minor. So anything we build from this is going to be chromatic. So we have two chords. We have E minor, and playing those together we get, which is that's another nice dark sound. But we can also play E major, and again it has the E natural in it, so this again is chromatic to C minor. So another interesting chord change. So moving down, going down to a minor third, we get A minor, which is very chromatic in relation to C minor. Interesting sound. And we also have A major. Again, both are chromatic to C minor. So that gives us this. Another interesting chord change. So that just leaves the A flat. Now A flat major is natural to the scale of C minor. The A flat and the E flat are both in the scale of C minor, so that is not chromatic at all, but A flat minor is. So playing those together gives us, which is another super sound. I hope that was clear. I hope you now understand how to find these interesting chords. And do bear in mind, these are just two chords. So we're playing one chord, then we're playing another chord. We are not creating big harmonic sequences. And in movie music, sometimes you just have to switch on an emotional feeling for the viewer, just like that. If I could snap my fingers. You only get a couple of seconds to do it, so these two chord combinations work extremely well, and you will hear them all over movie music. So to help you with all this, I've put together a little sort of cheat sheet. So if you want a particular emotion, you can look down the list and try the different chord combinations and see what you think. Obviously, music is subjective, so perhaps some of these are a little bit subjective, but I would hope that you would more or less agree with most of them. But in any event, they are a good starting place. So I will put a text version down in the description so you can copy and paste them into a document if you want to keep them for reference. So I hope you found this useful and interesting, and if you haven't come across chromatic medians before or were a bit fuzzy about them, I hope this has helped, and I hope it has been a little bit inspirational and has inspired you to go out and make some emotionally pulling music. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I will do my best to answer them, although I am not a professor of music. as always, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next video.